All right, Rabosai, good morning, Alichtike Chanukah to everyone. A great Zuchos Baruch Hashem to be able to begin this Yom Tov with our beautiful daf, our beautiful Masechah Sanhedrin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsors, the Tilsim Mishpacha of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the Sherman Drashos this year in the schus of finishing Masechas Ba'al Basra and Emeretz Hashem, wading into the holy waters of Masechas Sanhedrin. Maybe Zoche Emeretz Hashem to begin and complete many Masechtos together in the years to come. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Kislev, Josh and Becca Friedman, for dedicating all of the Shurim and Joshos this month, the creation of the yard site of Josh's father, Yisrael Yehuda, Ben Rav Chaim Rafal Zichron Livracha, for schus for the safe return of our hostages and the security of all of our soldiers. Sammy and Malka Esterson, in memory of their parents, Yitzchak Leib Ben Aaron HaKohen, Sarah Rachel Bas Baruch Avram, Hinda Bas Henech Ephraim, and in memory of their dear friend, brave soldier, beloved husband and father, Naftali Yonah Shemikom Damo Ben Beatrice Miriam and Daniel Yigal. And our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, David and Roberta Schwartz, in honor of Rabbi Aviva Silber and her absolutely incredible, delectable latkes. Okay, incredible. The Schwartz family had the honor and privilege of Hanukkah liftoff with the greatest latkes known to Am Yisrael. Well, okay, Baruch Hashem. That's quite the accolade, and a very special thank you to the Rebbetzin. All right, beautiful. I think our first ever Latka sponsorship dedication. Baruch Hashem, we thank the Schwartzes for that. Certainly a beautiful way to begin this Yom Tov. All right, well, so with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today. Today is our catch-up day. Today is the day, Meretz Hashem, we rejoin The ranks of Daf Yomi Klal Yisrael. So today's daf is Tess. Is actually not, but we are actually picking up on this might be a first. Ches Amud Aleph. Yeah, so okay, we're gonna be fine. So Ches Amud Aleph 8a, and the sound effects were unnecessary. The woo was there. All right, so Ches Amud Aleph 8a, and we are picking up. Let's go back to the two dots. The Chum Omrim Motzi Shema Be'esim Ushlosha, which is 2, 4, 5 lines up from the bottom. So the Gemara says, the Chum say, Motzi Shema Be'esim Ushlosha. Motzi Shema requires a Beis Din of 23. So the Gemara says, V'chi yesh bo dinei nefashos mahav. So remember again, the Chachamim said that the reason why Motzi Shema requires a Beis Din of 23 is because there's the possibility for dinei nefashos. Remember again, as we started with yesterday, when the case of Motzi Shema is Reuven marries Rachel. After they get married, he claims that she's not a basula. So there's two elements there. Element number one is that causes her to lose her ksuva. That's number one. Number two, as we're going to see, there's the possibility that this could turn into a capital case if there are witnesses regarding her adultery. So here's what's interesting. So essentially, the Chachamim say, general case of the Chachamim say, Motzi Shemra is going to be adjudicated by a Beis Din of 23. Why 23? Because even though, remember, Motzi Shemra is not beginning as a capital case, but it quickly has, well, not quickly, it has the ability to evolve into a capital case. So because it could evolve into a capital case, therefore halacha l'maisa, it's treated as a capital case and uses a Beis Din of 23. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. Right now, when Reuven is bringing it to Beis Din, Reuven is not bringing it to Beis Din as a capital case. He's bringing it to Beis Din as a monetary case. He's making a claim his wife wasn't a basula at the time they got married, and therefore halacha l'maisa, she should lose her ksuva. That's what he's claiming. So right now, it's a monetary case. If it's a monetary case, as we established in the Mishnah, monetary cases are adjudicated by a Beis Din of 3. So what's the pshat? To which the Gemara says, Amar Ula, b'chosheshin lelaz kamiflagi. So Ula says, what are we concerned about? B'chosheshin lelaz. Now, we'll say, take a look at Rashi for just a moment. So Rashi says over here, actually, not yet. Let's get to this. So the Gemara says, "V'kamiflagi." Rabbi Meir Savar in chosheshin lalaz. V'Rabbanan Savi chosheshin lalaz. So what is this? What is this chosheshin lalaz? So take a look at Rashi. V'cham omrim b'pnei sheyesh bo dinei nefashas kasach adaytra dehari kamri mishum diika motzi shemer deshayach be dinei nefashas. So I'll say essentially what laz means in this context is the following idea. Are we concerned that although the beginning, the genesis of this case is dinei mamonos, right? It's financial. Are we concerned that once things get going, people are going to hear about this case and witnesses are going to show up to testify about the adultery? That's laz means in this context rumors. So remember, Reuven's bringing Rachel to Beis Din for a financial matter. We got married, you weren't a Besula, I'm not giving you your ksuva. So now we have to be choshesh that once this case is in the docket and it's being heard, people are going to hear about it, and maybe witnesses who witnessed the adultery may surface and come to Beis Din. So essentially, the Gemara is like this: Rabbi Meir holds, we're not worried about that. That's not going to happen, and therefore this is a financial case, and because it's a financial case, it should be tried by a Beis Din of 3. The Chama, on the other hand, say no, we are concerned about this. This could easily escalate. This could easily evolve, and therefore, again, because it could evolve into a capital case, you might as well go ahead and convene a capital Beis Din now and start out with a Beis Din of 23. Fascinating. So I'll say, according to Ula, that is the machlokes that is unfolding over here. Rava on the other hand says, no, that's not it. Kuli Alma lalaz lo chashinon. No. The truth is, we're not concerned about that. If Reuven's bringing Rachel to Beis Din for a financial matter, we're not concerned that people are going to hear about this and end up, and witnesses are going to come forward, and it's going to turn into a capital case. That's not it. Rather, what's the concern over here? So this is very interesting. Here, we are concerned about the covered ultimately again for the original Beis Din. The both say, take a look at Rashi just a moment. The Choli Amalo Chashina Lalaz, Vim Tchilas Tivi Aso Shalbal, Loba Lidon Ala Api Edim, Ela Ali de Asmo Lafsida Ksuvasa, Modra Baran de Bishlosha. So both say, so now watch this. So Rava says, we're not concerned about laws. If Reuven brings Rachel to Beis Din, and this is a financial matter, we're confident it's going to remain a financial matter, and it's not going to escalate into a capital matter. So what's the issue over here? Rather, Rava says, what's the case in Mishnah? The case in Mishnah is like this. Reuven is bringing Rachel to Beis Din, and ultimately when he brings her to Beis Din, he's bringing her with an accusation of adultery. So because there's an accusation of adultery, therefore that requires what? A Beis Din of 23, because this is a capital case. Then what happened? Ve'ibdar. He couldn't prove the case. Otherwise, okay, so it happens. You bring an accusation, you don't meet the threshold of evidence, so the case is dismissed. Now what happens? Va'amar lahu dainu li miha dinei mamanis. Now listen to this. So everybody says, okay, fine, I got it. I tried to prove that she committed adultery. I was unsuccessful in that, but at least Beis Din, you have to accept my claim that she wasn't a besula, and therefore again cause her to lose her ksuva. Now, there's an important point that we have to highlight over here. Right? Remember, I mentioned this yesterday at the very tail end of the shir, and so we'll deal with it today. When Reuven brings Rachel to Beis Din and says she wasn't a besula, and therefore makes that claim and therefore causes her to lose her ksuva, how does he prove that claim? How does a man prove that his wife wasn't a besula? Remember, you could prove that she committed adultery, that you'd have to bring witnesses to prove that she committed adultery. How do you prove that she wasn't a besula? So Rashi points out over here something very interesting. We'll tell you this outside the Ansal. Actually, take a look at the last Rashi. Va'amar, Rashi says, Hol va'enli edim, danu li mihas b'shlosha dinei mamanis laf sadik suvas ha'idei atzmo. The kaimalon, look at the last couple lines of Rashi. Chachamim tiknu lahem lebenos Yisrael, lebsula masayin la'amana mana, v'im heim heminu laf sida al piv. The both say, listen to this. A husband is believed, based on his own statement, to claim that his wife was not a besula. Now I will say, now, how could that be? How could that be that he's believed to make that claim, and there doesn't need to be any other substantiation? So this is actually very interesting. So Rashi says, "Chazaka ein adam toreach besuda umafsida." I will say because it doesn't make sense for a man to make this claim frivolously. Why? So you have to understand something. In times of the Gemara, there was a very interesting custom. What was the custom? Who paid for the wedding? Who paid for the wedding? The chassan. Right? So who paid? So the chassan himself, not his parents, right? The chassan himself paid for the wedding, which means that when Reuven got married to Rachel, there was a tremendous financial investment. For them to turn around the day after they got married and say she wasn't the basula, why would he do that? Like what? Like in other words, it doesn't. The financial loss that he's going to have, right, is so incredibly significant. So Chazal said, if you're making that claim, we believe you. So again, a fascinating halacha over here. So I just want to point out. So when Reuven brings this claim, that so according to Rava, watch what's happening over. So let's frame this again. Machlokes in the Mishnah, a motzi shemer case. How many dayanim do you need? Tanakama 3, Chachamim 23. Now again, it seems to be Chachamim looking at this as a capital case, potential capital case. Rabbi Meir or the Tanakama looking at this as a financial case. So what's the machlokes? How do we frame it over here? So Ula says, Cheshinan Lalaz. We have to be concerned, perhaps what's going on over here is, are we concerned that even though Reuven is initiating this as a financial case, word gets out and witnesses to adultery could show up. So the Tanakama says, we're not worried about that. It's a financial case. Deal with it with 3, that's it. Chachamim say, no, we are concerned with that, and therefore start off with a basin of 23, even though the initiation of the case is a financial one. Rava says, that's not the machlokes. No one is concerned that what starts as a financial case could escalate into a capital case. So what's going on over here? The case begins as a capital case. The case in question is Reuven brings Rachel to Beis Din, and he says, you committed adultery. That's the claim. That's the claim. Okay, that requires a basin of 23. Then what happens? What if he can't prove the claims? So obviously the case dissolves. But imagine for a moment, Reuven can't prove the claim, but then he says to the basin, hey Chevra, 1 second, but I still have a financial claim, right? My financial claim is she wasn't a basula, so therefore again, and I'm believed to make that claim on my own, and therefore halacha l'maisa, give me a beis din to cause her to lose out on her ksuva. So the shayla b'osai is, afterwards, are we choshesh? Take a look at the last line in the Gemara. So l'meidan dinei nefashos ve'ibdar. So Reuven originally got the Beis Din together to do a capital case, but then he couldn't prove the case, so the Beis Din dispersed. Va'amar lehu dainu li mihad dinei mamanas. And Reuven says, okay, I failed to prove the evidence on the capital case, but at least adjudicate for me a financial case, cause her to lose the ksuva. But say, I'm a base, ches, I'm a base, right? You're flying. So the Gemara says, the issue over here, actually, no, go back, don't turn the page yet, sorry. So therefore, again, so the question over here is like this: are we worried about the covet of the original Beis Din or not? In other words, Rabbi say, meaning what? That halacha l'maisa, in other words, if you go ahead and you have 23, and then you go ahead and you disperse it, and you get together a Beis Din of 3, is that an affront to deal with the financial concern? Is that an affront to the original Beis Din or not? The Chachamim say yes, and therefore the Chachamim say just keep it a solid Beis Din of 23 for every case of Motzi Shemra and leave it alone. Rabbi Meir, the Tanakama, says no, it's not a big deal. It was a capital case. Now it's only a financial case, and that can be dealt with by a Beis Din of 3. Okay, I'm a Beis. So Meisved, you raise the kasha. The Chachamim omrim tavu mamon b'shlosha. Tavu nefashos be'eser mishlosha. So I said there's another brisa which speaks to this issue. The brisa says like this: the Chachamim say that if Reuven brings Rachel to Beis Din and the claim is a monetary claim, meaning, what does it mean when it's a monetary claim? That it's a straightforward case. The case is where Reuven says to Rachel, we got married, you were not a besula. In which case, what is he effectively claiming? She doesn't have a ksuva. So if that's the claim, the Chachamim say all you need is a Beis Din of 3. That's all. On the other hand, Tavu Nefashos, if he claims, Rachel, you committed adultery, so now this is a capital claim, then Be'eser Mishlosha, then that requires a Beis Din of 23. So let's analyze. So Bishlam the Rava. So we'll say, so this approach makes sense according to Rava. Tavan mamon tchila b'shlosha. Tavan nefashos tchila afilu mamon be'esr mushlosha. So we'll say, according to Rava, this makes sense. If the initial claim ultimately again was for mamon, then halach, which means I will say, remember, you don't go from mamon to nefashos. You'll just go from nefashos to mamon. So if the original claim was a monetary one, so okay, so then the basis that you need is 3. But I will say, if again the initial claim was for a capital case, then in that situation, halacha l'maisa, even if after failing to prove the capital case, he decides to pursue the financial claim, then halacha l'maisa, you'll keep a basin of 23. ela lu'ula kasha. But according to Ula, how do you reconcile this brisa? So then Rabbi say, this is our question, and now the Gemara is going to suggest a number of answers to this question. And Rabbi say, what's very exciting about the coming Gemaras is through the answer to the reconciliation between our Mishnah and the brisa, we're going to bring out a lot of new information to light. So Rabbi say, but just keep your eye on the ball for the Kor Machlokes. The Kor Machlokes is, what kind of Beis Din do I need for a Motzi Shemra case? So this is Machlokes Tanakama and the Chachamim. Tanakama holds 3, Chachamim hold 23. Now again, remember, in general, a Motzi Shemra case is a financial case. Ruvain is claiming Rachel wasn't the Basula, and therefore Aloha Lamaisa, she's not entitled to Ksuva. The issue, or the nuance, it's not even such a nuance, but the issue over here is, one could see how a Motzi Shemra case could easily escalate into a capital case. So it sounds like what's happening over here. The Chachamim say that because there is the capacity to have a capital case over here, keep a Beis Din of 23 intact. That seems to be what's unfolding. But let's analyze a bit more. So we'll say, but now we have a compounded problem because we have a contradiction between the Brisa and our Mishnah. Our Rava says as follows: Ani varisha bechabura. Targamina. So this is incredible. So Rava said, me and the lion of our chabura, right? The lion of our group. Now, who was the group? Who was the lion of the group? Umanu, Rabbi Chia bar Avin. So we say the following. What's the case over here? It's actually interesting. Shehevi habal edim shezinsa. Listen to this. So Reuven is married to Rachel. Reuven brought witnesses that Rachel committed adultery. Okay. Vehevi ha'av edim vezimum le'edi habal. Then the father of Rachel, right? Because remember again, the father of Rachel is defending his daughter. So the father of Rachel brings witnesses who make Reuven's witnesses Edim Zomimin. Right? So just to play this out, right? So Reuven brings witnesses that say that Rachel committed adultery on Chaf Hei Kislev. Chafei Kislev, right? So what happens? Then the father of Rachel brings witnesses to say, hey, witnesses, you couldn't have seen that because on the 25th of Kislev, you were with us, in Eretz Yisrael. And Znus happened somewhere else. So impossible, you didn't see that. That's Edim Zomin. Okay, so now watch this. So now, Baal Ligmos Mamon, Ligvos Mamon, Mibal Bishlosha. So I'll say, so ultimately, again, if they were coming, so Ligvos Mamon, Mibal Bishlosha. So when they're coming to collect money from the husband, ultimately, again, you need a basin of 3. So the Gemara says, Ubemakom Nefashas, Be'esim Bishlosha. And ultimately, again, in the capital case, you're going to require ultimately a basin of 23. Fine. Abaye says, so these are all just different ways of reconciling the machlokes. Abaye says, Kuli ama chashin lalaz. Okay, so Abaye is going back. So remember again the last piece? What was the last piece? The last piece said that when you begin adjudicating a case of Motzi Shemra, even though, again, it's a financial case, what are we concerned about, or what is there a possibility of? Possibility that it escalates, right? Laz means word gets out about this case, and it could cause witnesses to step forward who know about adultery. Okay, so therefore Abaye says, we are concerned about. We're also concerned about the following. We're also concerned about the possibility that if Reuven brings Rachel, initially convenes a basin of 23 because he accuses her of adultery, then can't prove that case, but then wants to go ahead and pursue a monetary claim. We're concerned that if we replace the basin of 23 with 3 to adjudicate the monetary case, that's an affront to the original basin. So Abaye says, essentially, we're concerned about both of these things. Okay, now watch this. What's the case here? Very interesting. The case over here is where the witnesses, remember again, I was saying, in order for Rachel, let's unpack this a little bit. In order for Rachel to be liable for adultery, there's a number of things that have to happen. And not only the act of adultery. What has to happen? There has to be eidos, there has to be testimony. And remember again, in general, in order for there to be capital liability, what else do you need? Hasra. There has to be warning, right? A person can never be punished for an act unless, of course, there is prior warning to their commission of that act. So watch this. The Gemara says, what's the case over here? The case is where the witnesses warned Rachel about adultery, but it was what we call a stam hasra. Stam hasra means a hasra that is not fully specific. Listen to this. V'hai tanahu. Tisanyo ushar kol chai v'miso shebetorah. In general, when someone does something that is liable to a death penalty in the Torah, Ein mamisin osam ela be'ida ve'edim v'hasra. So first of all, again, Rabbi say it's going to require Eda, so Eda means a beis din of 23, right? It's going to require Edim, witnesses, Hasra, warning, listen to this, Va'ad shiyodi'uhu shuchayiv misa bebeis din. And you're going to have to, again, part of the Hasra is telling a person, if you do this act, you're going to be liable execution in a beis din. Now watch this, Rabbi Huda says, no, that's not enough. Ad shiyodi'uhu be'iza misa hu nog, nerag. Rabbi Huda says it is not enough to tell a person that they are going to be subject to Misa's beis din. Rather, what do you have to say? You have to be death specific, death penalty specific, that you're going to go ahead and be liable to this particular type of death penalty. So interestingly enough, what the Gemara is suggesting over here is that halacha l'maisa, is that the Rabbanon would hold that any type of hasra will work, and Rabbi Meir, on the other hand, holds like Rabbi Huda. Rabbi Meir is the Tanakama, holds like Rabbi Huda that ultimately one requires what we'll call a penalty-specific hasra. Okay, Rapapa says Hacha be'isha chavera askinon. Rapapa says we're talking about over here about Rachel is an isha chavera. Isha chavera means a knowledgeable woman. Right, like we've seen like a chaver, right? A chaver is someone who's knowledgeable in halacha and is careful with the precepts of halacha. So Rachel is a knowledgeable woman who is careful with halacha. You'll say to yourself, that sounds a little bit strange, given the fact that she's committing adultery. All of us have our inconsistencies, and this is an incredibly important yisod, right? In other words, all of us have the stuff that we are very good at and the stuff in which we are very bad at, and the things in which we are meticulous with and the things in which we trample over. Such is the nature of human nature. And Rabbi says incredibly important. This is why Kadosh Baruch Hu looks at us in our totality and doesn't just look at us through the lens of our flaws. So again, Rachel is a very smart woman who knows halacha, but unfortunately has this weakness. The kamiflagi beplukta de Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Huda v'Rabbanan the Sanya. Listen to this, very interesting. Rabbi Yossi Huda Omer Chaver ein tzarech hasra lefish lo nitna hasra ela lahavchin ben shogeg lemezid. So this is very interesting. Rabbi Yossi Huda says, and this is really interesting, that a chaver, someone who is knowledgeable, does not require hasra. Fascinating. Why? Because what's the whole point of hasra? What's the whole point of hasra? Right? Essentially, it's not just the warning, it's to make sure you know that what you're doing is wrong. In other words, we'll say there's always the possibility that a person is so ignorant that they do not know that what they are doing is incorrect. So that's the whole point of hasra. So therefore, again, Rabbi Yossi Huda says, essentially, if you have someone who knows, Hasra becomes totally unnecessary. So the Gemara suggests perhaps this is the point of contention. All right, Rav Ashi says Kigon. We'll say top of Tes Mendalef 9a. Kigon da Asru Bei Malkus v'lo Asru Bei Ktala. So this is very interesting. We'll say. So again, Rav Ashi suggests that the point of contention over here between the Tanakam and the Chachamim is in a case where they warned her regarding Malkus, right, that she will receive lashes, but they did not give her hasra for a death penalty. Okay, v'kamiflagi beplukta to Rabbi Shmuel v'Rabbanan, and ultimately this is the machlokes Rabbi Shmuel v'Rabbanan. What's the machlokes? Tisnan makos b'shlosha. So ultimately, again, makos could be given over in a beis din of 3. Rabbi Shmuel or be'esrim b'shlosha. Rabbi Shmuel says no, even malchus has to be administered in a beis din of 23. Now, we're going to see that machlokes. I think that is not tomorrow's. A couple of dapnotes. Okay, Samech. We have a little while till we get that. But we'll see about it's actually an interesting machlokes about Malchus. Is Malchus given in just some basin of 3, or Malchus a basin given of 23? So the Gemara is suggesting that perhaps that's the machlokes here between Rabbi Meir Tanakama and the Chachamim. Okay, Ravina says Kigon Shenim. This is very interesting. Kigon Shenimtza Echa Min Ha'edim Karav Opasel. What's the case over here? The case over here is where Rachel is warned, right? She gets hasra, but it turns out that one of the witnesses is either related to one of the parties or puzzle, or somehow again is invalid for testimony. V'kamiflagi beplukta Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbi Ali b'Rabbi Akiva. And there's machlokas over here between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi in accordance with the position of Rabbi Akiva. So before we go on, if you look at Rashi, Rashi says over Echa min ha'edim, it's the first short line in Rashi. Vayusham shlosha o arba sheyechola eidos leskayim b'shar. So I'll say we're going to see over here something very interesting, that one of the witnesses to her act of adultery, right? So again, we're talking about again, Reuven went ahead and married Rachel. Rachel committed adultery. One of the witnesses to her adultery is someone who is invalid to give testimony, either because they're related or they're puzzle. But interestingly enough, there is still a large enough testimonial unit to be able to give testimony even without. So for example, there were three witnesses who saw her commit adultery. One of them is invalid. So now what do we do? So watch this. Rabbi Akiva says as follows. Lo ba shlishi ela lahachmir alav lasos dino ki yotze be'elu. Rabbi Akiva highlights the following idea. Now the Torah says api shnayim edim o shlosha edim yakum davar. Right? The pasuk says either by 2 or 3 witnesses the matter will be upheld. So the obvious question that everyone deals with is, if testimony is upheld by 2 witnesses, then what? It's obviously upheld by 3. So why does the Torah need to go out of its way to mention anything about this third witness? So Rabbi Akiva says, Lo ba shlishi ela lahachmir alav lasos dino ki yotze be'elu. Torah mentions the third witness only to be machmir, to make the third witness like the other 2. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Lo ba shlishi. The mimashma shene'emar api shnayim edim yakum kol shekin shlosha nama ne'emar o shlosha edim. So again, once the Torah tells me that you could uphold testimony through 2 witnesses, then why is there a need to say anything about 3 witnesses? Lama ne'emar o shlosha edim ella lahachmir alav litin chomer be'edei sheker sheshlishi ze av api shelo haya ze nidon al piv lemisa shari b'shnayim she'idu tchila. Nami hayanidon afilu hachi asa kasev as dino ki yotze be'elu. So I'll say he's coming to teach us the following halacha, that the third witness, even though he was not necessary to the testimonial unit, shares the fate of the other 2 witnesses. So for example, if you have a group of 3 witnesses and 2 of them were made into edim zomamin, right? The third shares that same fate. Why are you punishing me? This was fine without me. I don't contribute anything to this. No, if you're part of the testimonial unit, you're part of the testimonial unit. Imkain, if that's the case, the Gemara says, back to the Gemara, so Imkain, Anash HaKosov as Hanitba La'ovri Avera, Ki Ovri Avera. So it says very beautiful. The Gemara says, what do you see from here? You see from here that when someone attaches themselves to a group that is committing an Avera, even if the person did not commit the Avera, they're still held culpable. Right, I will say, see, this is quite fascinating, right? So you see this yisod. So here you have 3 witnesses. 2 of them are found to be edim zomamin, right? The third shares the fate of that same testimonial unit. But the third guy could say, hey, I didn't contribute anything, right? The testimony was fine without me as well. Why should I be dragged into this? Rather, what do you see? When you attach yourself to sinful behavior, you're dragged down within that dynamic. It's incredible. I will say, we spoke about this just the other day, right? That when you go, remember we spoke about this? We spoke about this by the cities that were in Babel on the border to Eretz Yisrael, right? And that those cities were adjudicated like in accordance with the law of Eretz Yisrael. When you attach yourself to Eretz Yisrael, good things happen. When you attach yourself to negative people, to bad influences, bad stuff happens. And even if you're not participatory in the same way in which the negative behavior is occurring, being attached to negativity by definition drags you down. But the Gemara says, here's the good thing. Alachas kama v'kama sheyishalem schar es hanitfa la'oseh mitzvah ki oseh mitzvah. I will say, but the positive is even more true, which is so beautiful. All the more so, again, if a person attaches themselves to those who are performing the mitzvah, all the more so ultimately, again, that they are reckoned as performers of mitzvah themselves as well. So remember again, whatever is true in the negative is more so true in the positive. So if attaching myself to the negative causes me ultimately to be reckoned with that chevra, then attaching myself, let's say, it's really, the lashon over here is so incredible. The kama sheishalem schar es hanitfa la'oseh mitzvah. This is not even talking about someone who performs a mitzvah. Rather, what is this talking about? It's about someone who goes ahead and attaches himself. Mitzvah means like tafel. Tafel means secondary. if I attach myself to the right chevra, I attach myself to the right people, I attach myself to the right influences, by definition, I'm pulled up. I'm pulled up. Sometimes life is not even about doing the right thing, but it's just attaching yourself to the right people, to the right influences. And by definition, you're brought up higher and higher. Incredible. Umashnayim, so let's finish up the Gemara. Umashnayim nimsa achmen karav apostle idu sambatela. So just like again, if you have two witnesses, if one of them is found to be a karav or apostle, obviously the entire testimonial unit falls apart. Av shlosha nimsa achmen karav apostle idu sambatela. So we'll say, so the same thing applies even with a group of three. Even if you have three witnesses, they are a testimonial unit. Once one part of the unit falls apart, what occurs? The entire unit falls apart. How do I know that this applies even to a testimonial unit of 100? I have 100 witnesses, and one of them is found to be a karav or apostle. How do I know that the entire testimonial unit falls apart? So the Gemara says, Talmud Lomar Eidim. Pasuk says Eidim. Eidim teaches me that witnesses are treated as a cohesive unit. Rabbi Yossi. When is this so? B'dinei nefashos. When is this so? This is so when it comes to capital law. Aval b'dinei mamanis tiskayim eidos b'shar. So Rabbi said, this is fascinating. So Rabbi Yossi says, when do we say that when part of a testimony? Now I'll say, just to be clear, everyone agrees that if you have two witnesses and one of them is disqualified, what happens to the testimonial unit? It's null and void. That's obvious. What we're going to say is the machlokes is if you have, let's say, three or more witnesses, and one of them is disqualified, what happens to the rest of the testimonial unit? So the Gemara just seemed to say, well, again, three is like two. And therefore, once the third witness is disqualified, the whole unit falls apart. Rabbi Yossi says, when is that so? That is only true in capital cases. In capital cases, when one of the witnesses is disqualified, the entire testimonial unit dissolves. But in monetary law, no. Let the testimony move on with the remaining witnesses. That's Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi says no. Echad dinei mamanis ve'echad dinei nefashos. Rabbi says not true. Not true. Whether it's monetary law, capital law, once one of the witnesses is disqualified, the entire testimonial unit falls apart. But watch this. Ve'emasai. But when is that? When do we say that if one of the witnesses is disqualified, the entire testimonial unit, no matter how big it is, falls apart? When is that? Bizman shehistru bahen. When all of the witnesses participated in the hasra, specifically the invalid witness as well. Right? Because we'll say what happens when the witnesses, specifically the invalid one, participated in the hasra, then what? That shows that they're serving as witnesses. Aval bizman shelo histru bahen. But let's say again the invalid witness did not participate in the hasra. Amud beis. Mayasu shnei achim ve'echad ve'echad shero ve'echad shagas hanefesh. So listen, now watch this. If the witness, let me just say this outside, then we'll see it inside. The Gemara says something very interesting. When does a group become a testimonial unit? So it's interesting. Up until now, I would have thought, when do they become a testimonial unit? When they observe an event together. The Gemara says that's not true. Rebbe says that's not true. They become a testimonial unit when they deliver hasra together. They deliver hasra, right? They're all part of the delivering of the warning. That's when they are concretized and forged as a testimonial unit. If they do not deliver hasra together, then by definition they are just a group of people who went ahead and saw an event together. Now watch this. Let's say you have Reuven, Shimon, who are brothers, and Avram, and they see A kill B. They see A kill B. So we'll say, so now listen to this. If Shimon and Avram are now, if Reuven, Shimon, and Avram are the ones who all go ahead and deliver hasra, then they're a testimonial unit. And what's going to be the problem? Because they're a testimonial unit, what's the nature of their unit? Disqualified. Why disqualified? Two of the witnesses are related to each other. Not going to work. But let's say you have a situation of where Reuven and Shimon and Avram saw A kill B, but only Shimon and Avram delivered the hasra, not Reuven. So the Gemara suggests that'll work. That'll work. Because since Reuven did not participate in the hasra, therefore by definition he's not part of the testimonial unit, even though he observed the event together with them. The Gemara says it has to be this way. Otherwise, any time that relatives observe the same event together, they can't be witnesses. That doesn't make sense. So the Gemara said this is fascinating. When is a group concretized as a testimonial unit? When they all deliver Hasura together. But if one of the members is non-participatory in the Hasura, he does not become part of the testimonial. Now again, to become part of the Hasura, lav dafka, they all have to talk. But the point is they're all engaged in the process of giving over the warning. So quite interesting. So therefore Rabbi say, so let's just to bring this together. So Rabbi essentially says like this. Normally we're going to paskin that halacha l'maisa, when you have a testimonial unit, no matter how big the testimonial unit is, when one of the members of the unit is disqualified, what happens? Everyone's supposed to say, but that is halacha l'maisa. We know this because we know this from Malchus, right? What's the phrase? Eidos shebatla miktsasa, batla kula. Whenever you have a testimonial unit and part of it is invalidated, the entire unit is disqualified. Rebbe just comes along and says, that's only if the disqualified person is part of the unit. What makes the disqualified person part of the unit? He was participatory in the Hasra. But if he wasn't participatory in the Hasra, he's not part of the unit. If he's not part of the unit, then when his disqualification is discovered, then what? He's disqualified, but the rest of the unit remains intact. Look at Rashi. Just last Rashi on Amud Aleph. Sorry, going back for just a second. Rashi says over here, Bizman shehisru hakarav al apostle ba'ovre avera shegilu daitam sha'av hein na'asim edim. See, Rabbi say in this case over here, for example, when Reuven and Shimon, right? Reuven, Shimon, and Avram are seeing A kill B. When Reuven participates in the Hasura, what is he showing? I'm an aid. I'm an aid to this, okay? You are an aid. It's true, shkayach, but you're also Shimon's brother, which also disqualifies both of you from testifying about the same event. So let's say this is incredible. So when the disqualified individual participates in the Asra, that shows that he's asserting his identity as an aid. But if he's just present, but doesn't participate in the Hasra, then he's an observer and not a witness. Incredible. So I will say, just by the this is a nugget of ridiculously important information. So again, we paskin when you have a testimonial unit, no matter how big it is, if one of the witnesses in that unit is disqualified, everyone is disqualified. It doesn't make the unit is disqualified. It doesn't make a difference if it's a capital case, monetary case. However, that's only when the disqualified individual acted in the capacity as an aid. What shows that you're acting in the capacity as an aid? You are participatory in the Hasra. But if you're not participatory in the Hasra, you're an observer, you're an aid, and therefore, when your disqualification is discovered, you're disqualified, but the rest of the group remains intact. Incredible. We'll say, Testimony Bays 9b, second line. B by say, the other possibility is Kigon. Oh, interesting. The other possibility is, what's the case over here? Both says all the Motzi Shemra case, right? But in this case over here, they're warning Rachel about adultery. The case over here is other people warned her about the other people. In other words, warned her about the adultery, not the Eidim. Very interesting. So you have two groups of people. You have like a Hasra group, right? And you have an Eidus group. So the Gemara says, Here's the machlokes. This nan, Rabbi Yossi says, the olam eino nerag achu pishne edim masrin bo. Okay, this is fascinating. Rabbi Yossi says, in order to put someone to death, it has to be the same chevra, has to give hasra and witness. Same people, hasra and witness. Shnei emar apishnayim edim. So perhaps that's the point of contention over here. What happens when you have two groups, a Hasra group and an Eidus group? Does that work or not? Machlokes. You might say the other possibility is, but we're just trying to figure out what's the Machlokes Shai Meir and the Rabbanon. You always say, Kigon, tischachush bebdikos, v'lo ischachush bechakiros. Okay, so this is so interesting as well. So I'll say, what's the case? So here you have a testimonial unit. And the unit was refuted. So we'll say, as we're going to see, and this is really quite interesting, remember, whenever witnesses show up in Beis Din, so it's not just the pshat that like you roll into Beis Din, say your thing, and Beis Din's like, okay, right? In other words, that when you show up in Beis Din and you deliver testimony, there's what we call drishas v'chakiros. There's cross-examination, right? We want to make sure that you're telling the truth. So the Gemara suggests over here that there's really two levels of what we'll call cross-examination. There's bedikos and chakiros. If you look at Rashi, this is very interesting. Bedikos, Rashi says, Ze omer kelev shalbal shechorim, v'zomer levanim. So we'll say, so bedikos means like this. Bedikos is where we go ahead and we ask the witnesses a series of questions about the parties involved in the event. So for example, witnesses show up and they say Reuven committed adultery with Rachel. Or whatever, Reuven's married to Rachel. Reuven committed adultery with Shimon. Okay, what was Shimon wearing? What was Shimon wearing? So we'll ask them questions about the parties involved. Chakiros, on the other hand, look at Rashi. Chakiros, Rashi says, is Eze Yom ve'eze Shah ukiyotze bazeh. So we'll say, so Chakiros are more general, what we'll call like situational questions. What was the date? What date did you see this? What time of the day did it occur? So more what we'll call like almost like background information questions about the timing and the circumstances around the events. Well, so now watch this. So the Gemara says we're dealing with the case where witnesses showed up and they were refuted based on bedikos but not on chakiros. In other words, so we'll say, so the Gemara says, so they say bedikos lo bechakiros. V'kamiflagi beplukta de ben Zakkai v'Rabbana. This is fascinating. And what's the machlokis over here? The machlokis over here is ben Zakkai and Rabbana. Watch this. Disnan. Maisa ubadak ben Zakkai b'uktzei te'enim. So let's listen to this. There was once an episode that witnesses testified about an event that happened by a fig tree. And Ben Zakkai asked them about the thickness of the figs. The thickness of the figs, right? In other words, what did the stem? About the stems, right? So in other words, so I'll say here's the shaila essentially. The machlokas is how specific do you have to get with witnesses in order for their testimony to be accepted? And I will say, by the way, this is going to be part of a much larger motif that we're going to see that the way the system works, right? The way the system works ultimately again is that halacha l'maisa. Beis Din does not want to put people to death, right? That's not what they want, right? So we're going to see. So therefore, again, what we're going to see is over and over. Halacha l'maisa, Beis Din will try to do whatever they can to throw up as many roadblocks to death penalties. So again, we'll get into that in a little bit in Meretz Hashem. But l'maisa, that's the machlokes over here. How specific do you have to be in the acceptance of this testimony? Amar Rav Yosef, Hevi habal. So okay, so therefore, again, we have all these different interpretations in terms of halacha l'maisa. How the machlokes, the Chachamim and Rebbe manifests itself in the Mishnah. But Amar Rav Yosef, Hevi abal edim shezinsa ve'evi ha'edim. So we'll say so again. So just bottom line. Okay, let's circle back all the way over here. So bottom line, we had a machlokes in terms of what is the nature of a Beis Din for Motzi Shemra. Machlokes between, and this is all of our first Mishnah. Machlokes between the Chachamim Tanakama, who's Rabbi Meir, and the Chachamim. Rabbi Meir says a Beis Din of 3, Tanakama says 3, and ultimately again, and the Chachamim say a Beis Din of 23. Just so you should know, the way we pass the Rama Paskins is that Motzi Shemra is dealt with a Beis Din of 23. That's how the Rambam Paskins. Why? What's the logic? Again, the logic is quite simple because there's a significant concern that even though Motzi Shemra is coming to Beis Din as what? He's coming to Beis Din as a financial case, but it can easily escalate into what? Into a capital case. So because that could happen, we put that Beis Din in there as 23 from the beginning. That's how we paskin halacha l'maisa. Beautiful. I mean, not beautiful, not good, but again, beautiful in terms of resolution of halacha. Amar Rav Yosef, Hevi abal edim shezinsa, vehevi ha'av edim vezim le'edi abal, edi abal ne'eragim ve'im mishalim mammon. So we'll say, so now we're going to, actually we'll say, we'll stop over here for today. Oh, by the way, shkoyach. Right? Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I say, well, now we are officially caught up with the rest of Klal Yisrael. Shkach to everyone. Right? But we did it. We always do it. Mamish, our own little Chanukah miracle. Let's say we'll pick up Emirat Hashem with this sugi tomorrow. Shkach everyone. Alichtike Chanukah. All right, Chevron Zuma, Alichtike Chanukah everyone.